pro-Palestine activists pitched up outside a synagogue in St. John's Wood, which is a very Jewish area, and they started protesting, and the police moved them round the corner where people going to the synagogue would still come into contact with them. Do you feel that this is adequate, or should they have been moved to a different area, do you think?
And this happened in the UK.
Yes.
Again, I'm not familiar with the UK's police presence and its relationship with Palestine or Israel. I myself personally, again, I am pro-love, but I am staunchly pro-Palestine in all contexts. I'm not familiar with the situation. If you're describing it pragmatically, of course, that's inherently wrong. And I know, at least in the American context, there's no thing that's like this that is happening whatsoever.
Was there not a thing a few weeks ago or days ago with when in New York when protesters pitched up outside a synagogue? I think a lot of Jewish people felt that if they want to protest, they have the whole rest of the city. Why come to a place of Jewish worship?
I mean, that's fair. And if that continues to ramp up and that it continues to accentuate, then that is a problem. But I think, nothing personal, but I think it is a bit strange that this is the focus when we're focusing on how people, protesters are reacting. I get that there is, it could lead to anti-Semitism, but I think generally speaking, you have a very privileged class of people, and when it comes to Israel and Palestine, there was a literal ethnic cleansing. And I think, and in my day-to-day life, I think anti-Semitism it is real, it does happen, but I think it's a class. Jews are more typically an enriched class comparatively to Palestinians, especially globally.
When you say that Jews are more of a privileged class, does that mean that when stuff happens maybe outside synagogues, because of what's happening in Gaza, we shouldn't talk about it so much?
No, it's not that. Of course, if it happens a lot, but I think relatively speaking, it happens much less. There's much less anti-Semitism than there is violence against Palestinians right now, at least in my context.
In the UK and the US?
I think when it comes to actual physical violence and when it comes to actual ramifications, yes, for sure.
Against Palestinians and against Palestinians in the US and UK, there's more discrimination against them than Jews?
I guess, I'm talking more globally, and I guess there probably is ideologically more anti-Semitism rising in the US and the UK. That's always been the case. There is staunch Islam in the UK and US as well. So it's just hard for me to say. Again, the case I'm not too familiar with, but again, I'm objectively against anti-Semitism, but it's just tricky when it is one of a human genocide, and then it says, well, what about anti-Semitism? It's hard to balance it all. That makes sense.
I always think it's very interesting when people feel the need to bring up Israel and Gaza when I'm just here talking about anti-Semitism. They are a lot of people are unable to discuss what British Jews or Jews in the United States or anywhere are going through without saying, but what about what's happening here? But what about what's happening here? If there is racism against a group, it should be condemned unequivocally, full stop.